I think it's both sector specific and it's company specific. We've kind of focused on M&A in the context of Indian companies going outside. I think one of the things that is very significant right now for us, for India as a market and for M&A, is the long-term strategic interest in India, right? I mean, we see that, by the way, in our businesses, where our multinational clients are yet saying that if we're unrepresented in India or underrepresented in India, and if you understand the long-term potential, and I know that's a bit of a cliche, but if you understand that we are yet seeing a very significant interest from our multinational clients that want to be in India. So it's a little bit of both.
And they are still willing to let India settle down further around that 5% before they make that move.
Well, as I said, if you're here for the long haul, frankly,
this is a good time.
This could be a good opportunity.
Yeah, indeed so. Okay, but corporations are often trying to make use of that interest rate arbitrage. Today is that one of their key focuses, because in India they constantly see that the market is going to remain tight from a liquidity standpoint, and yet they have the options of going overseas at probably cheaper rates.
Well, yes and no, right? Because if we were having this conversation 2 years ago or 18 months ago, yes, in an environment where Indian interest rates were rising and global interest rates were very much flat, the arbitrage was very exciting and attractive, and we did see a number of very large sections of corporate India accessing dollar financing. However, when you sit today on the back of a 20% depreciation in the rupee, it is no longer as appealing or attractive, because that has an inbuilt cost. So I think you have to look at it in a slightly more balanced or calibrated fashion. And there is a view today that over the next 12 to 24 months you will be in a declining interest rate cycle. It's not a question of if, it's a question of kind of when. And therefore you calibrate your view depending on where you find yourself.
But is rupee getting you a bit worried at the moment?
Well, I think, again, yes and no. I think on one hand, if you look at our inflation, and if you look at the fiscal situation over the last few years, you could make the case that the rupee was overvalued at 44, 45, and it did need to find a more sensible level which would make India more economic and kind of make India more attractive. Having said that, given where we find ourselves today with the rupee, it's absolutely a cause for concern, and it's really driven by the current account deficit, and it's driven by the lack of flows into India, both institutional and kind of FDI. Obviously, there are two significant factors, one of which is pretty much out of your control, which is the price of oil. And then there is gold.
That is actually on a decline for now.
Right. So I think, like with everything else, a little bit of divine intervention always helps.
And we're all still waiting and watching.
For the first time, we're seeing regulators pretty much the world over speak one language. There's obviously some amount of changes that need to be made in terms of regulations, in terms of legislation, which would allow us to convert our branch system into a subsidiary.
It's been 5 years since the market has been consolidating, okay, but there's no way it's a bear market, because you still have a very substantial number of companies hitting their all-time highs.
Find out Kenneth Andrade's winning strategies on Meet Your Fund Manager only on ET Now.
Blue Bots get you uninterrupted YouTube videos. Be Blue, it's simply better. Reliance. पिछले 30 सालों से गांव-गांव को देश की मुख्य धारा से जोड़ रहा है नाबार्ड। गांव बढ़े तो देश बढ़े।
Opportunity comes knocking every minute on ET Now. ET Now gives you more stock ideas from the best technical analysts every day and talks to the management of the most promising companies. Breaking stories that impact your investments. Make every opportunity a profit opportunity from 8 to 10:30 a.m. only on ET Now. When the business day comes to a close, you need crucial intelligence to set the next day's agenda. ET Now's lineup of evening shows helps you prepare for your business mornings. At 6 p.m., give your business the advantage of the critical breaking news on Rush Hour. At 7 p.m., gain international perspective on Global Business Report. At 7:30 p.m., Business Express gives you a fast-paced look at all the stories of note. At 8, take a peek into what's driving India Inc. with Business First. At 8:30 p.m., Markets Tomorrow gives you a head start on the next day's trading outlook. At 9, find out the day's newsmakers and what it means for your business on Business Tonight. And at 10, get a roundup of the top 10 stories that define the business day on Top 10 at 10. Stay ahead of the news, only on ET Now.
Let's talk about your own sector. You recently held your own investor conference, and there's plenty of bullishness in banks still, despite their exposure to what have become non-performing or not very great assets at the moment. Do you think banking inherently is going to go through a bit of a transformation because of this slowdown, because of the kind of exposure they have?
Well, first of all, I'd like to step back and look at the banking industry globally before we talk about the Indian banking industry. I think when you look at the banking industry globally, we are of the view, and I'm a subscriber to that theory, that the banking industry over the next few years will undergo a pretty significant transformation. There are many elements that are going to constitute this transformation. I mean, first of all, there's going to be regulatory change, right? I think for the first time we're seeing regulators pretty much the world over speak one language. And, what are regulators telling the industry? Less risk, more capital.
You're referring to Basel III.
Well, you can call it Basel III, you can call it whatever you like, but the direction is pretty clear. I think we will also see a situation where certain revenue streams which banks have enjoyed over in the past will either, we will not be allowed to participate in, or will become exorbitant from a capital point of view. So, more capital, lower revenue streams, right? And then there are certain, on the expense side, we will also see some amounts of expenses going up as you look at, the social costs of inclusion and in everything else that's coming along the way. So in general, you will see a banking industry that's going to go through a change. And then, of course, if you look at what's happening in Europe, you're talking about massive deleverage. So when you put all of this together, I think there is no question that the industry will have to undergo a change. Now, typically, at least philosophically where we are in things like this is we tend to want to be ahead of the problem, and you want to try and address the problem before it hits you, which means you have to look at your expense bases very carefully and look at re-engineering or reorienting your expense base, and then you have to constantly look out for new and exciting client-led revenue opportunities. So I think that's broadly for the banking industry globally. I think in India, what we found is that the banking industry over the last kind of decade or so has really enjoyed a wonderful run, which is kind of commensurate with the way the economy has grown, sure, and with a number of factors. Now, I don't believe that is necessarily coming to an end, but I certainly do think that there's going to be, as I said, I keep going back to cautiously optimistic. So I think that the opportunities remain, and the prospects for the industry in the future are very optimistic, but it has to be, we have to kind of calibrate that with some amount of cautiousness related to some of the global things that I've been talking about, and the issue that you referred to, which is, some amount of bad loans that will pass through the system, whether we like it or not.
Has the RBI in any way signaled to banks about changing their priorities in terms of lending and the exposures to the sectors that are now finding themselves in a bit of a struggle?
I don't think the RBI necessarily directs banks to, from a sector-specific point of view. I think the RBI operates obviously at a more philosophical
True, but in real estate, they were very blunt, and they said so and sent the signal out to banks.
Right, but I think that's more, wherever the central bank senses that asset bubbles or asset inflation is taking place as a consequence of excessive lending to a particular sector, which is not necessarily based on real growth in that sector, the central bank, like any other central bank, will step in and kind of wave a bit of a cautious flag, and that's what we've seen.
From a foreign bank standpoint, do you think RBI's policies have lately been more positive from a subsidiary model point of view? Is that something that interests Citi?
I think there are two things. We've talked a lot about the subsidiarization model. The initial guidelines were, from our perspective, fairly positive. There's obviously some amount of changes that need to be made in terms of regulations, in terms of legislation, which would allow us to convert our branch system into a subsidiary. We've had a lot of engagement both with the central bank, with the Reserve Bank of India and the government, and quite frankly, we've been very encouraged with their response. And, I would like to believe that the path will be laid for us to be able to convert into a subsidiary in the, foreseeable future. And if that makes sense, we will absolutely do so. Having said that, in our current form, I think, we operate slightly smaller than we'd like to be in terms of a physical presence. And we're constantly, working with them to try and increase that presence.
Okay, let's come back to the glass half full. If you had three things to tell to the finance minister today, what are you going to pick?
I don't think we're going to talk about specific kind of requests for the finance minister
Not even now.
This forum. But I think, as I said, generally, right, I think it's more a question of signaling to the rest of the world, right, that we have the ability, even within the existing political system, to take certain decisions. I think if you look at the last 2 or 3 weeks, right, we've made some very difficult decisions. We made a decision related to fuel prices. I think yesterday's general move on the telecom side is positive. So I think I am a believer in incremental reform, and I believe that if you make small decisions which are important, but most importantly signal to the rest of the world that we're very aware of the opportunity, we're very aware of the problems that exist, and we're willing to take decisions that will, over a period of time, deal with each of these. I think that's what we would really like to see.
One thing, now that you meet so many people and you realize that the sentiment is something that's really at an all-time low, do you believe we're actually at a point where the mood in the country is lower than what it was when Lehman went bust?
It's difficult to put a measurement to sentiment, right? But I think it is fair to say that if you look at sentiment from 2 points of view, if you look at foreign sentiment and if you look at the climate for investments, right, those two kind of broad categories, I think, yes, today there is definitely an opportunity for us to improve both those sentiments on both those areas.
Oh, on that positive note, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bots let you roam seamlessly across 333 towns. Be Blue, it's simply better. Reliance.
है ये पसीना मर्सराइज्ड कॉटन से बना कोठारी वेस्ट, कूल एंड कंफर्टेबल. पसीना गॉन, हसीना ऑन. कोठारी वेस्ट ब्रीफ्स एंड सॉक्स.
My specialty is pastries, not predictions. Knowing what to make and when could help cut down on thousands of unsold baked goods per month. Using analytics, we discovered when it's drizzling outside, people eat more cake. And when the temperature rises, panini sales go up. Finding these hidden connections helped our European bakeries increase profitability by up to 20%. Let's build a smarter planet.
कुरियर मेरे लिए.
कुरियर नहीं, Flipkart.com से दादा का नया मोबाइल आया है
विद ड्यूल सिम.
ऑनलाइन शॉपिंग.
अरे इट्स सिंपल, ऑर्डर करो और घर बैठे फ्री डिलीवरी लो.
पर देखे बगैर पापा आप.
फ्लिपकार्ट पे जो दिखता है वही बिकता है पप्पू.
एक फोटो देख के
शादी से पहले आपका भी सिर्फ फोटो ही देखा था.
शॉपिंग का नया एड्रेस Flipkart.com, the online mega store.
I invite you all to the Global Investors Meet 2020.
I welcome you all to explore Advantage Karnataka.
Come and experience Advantage Karnataka at the Global Investors Meet 2012 on June 7th and 8th at Bangalore.
One club sandwich. Your treat, na?
हाँ, दिल बड़ा होना चाहिए. Then one risotto, one grilled salmon, and one... No. 2 tiramisu.
What?
Fine. 1 tiramisu.
नहीं यार, मेरे इंटरनेट डोंगल का बिल देख, 1000 रुपीज एक्स्ट्रा.
रिजोटो.
और ये देख, सिर्फ 300 MB एक्स्ट्रा यूसेज.
मेरे नेटवर्क पे होते तो एडजस्ट करके लोएस्ट पॉसिबल बिल आता. कम यूज करो या ज्यादा. सामन
कैंसल. अरे बट
तुम पहले अपना बिल छोटा करो, बिल बाद में बड़ा कर लेना.
Reliance Net Connect का My Best Plan. It's simply better. Reliance.